Will we hear from the President of the United States today?
Yes, and in fact, the president is going to be meeting with Attorney General William Barr later this morning in the 10 o'clock hour, Jonathan, and then we'll have a teleconference call with governors from around the country and national security officials from around the country as America wakes up to scenes of unrest and, unfortunately, riots that played out from Boston to Santa Monica. Here in Washington, D.C., just outside of the White House, where the riots really erupted, and there were several clashes with Secret Service agents as well as police officials. Like other cities, the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, imposing a curfew of 11 p.m. last night. Unclear if that's going to continue for tonight, though it is expected. I spoke with a senior source yesterday on Joe Biden's presidential campaign and asked how the Biden campaign would be dealing with this. And what this source told me, Jonathan, was that he is going to likely continue to be making appearances at peaceful protests and at the same time calling for there to be some type of criminal justice reform, significant reform. You'll think back to the conversations that we've had right here on this program about economic stimulus over the next couple of weeks. I'm told that the next vehicle that could come through is now very likely going to have to include some type of reform to address the killing of George Floyd. This is a significant moment in civil rights history, as well as a significant moment in American politics that is divorced entirely of the economic reality on Wall Street.
For our international audience here on TV and radio, and also, of course, for all of you waking up across this nation, the imagery of Lafayette Park north of the White House. Kevin, to be clear here, they turned the lights out at the White House for a security reason. There was unrest at Lafayette Park, but as you mentioned on civil rights, this is not 1968, way up 14th Street plus U Street in Washington. No. What's the distinction that you observed in the unrest in Washington overnight versus other protests and riot we've seen?
You know, you mentioned 14th Street, a historic African-American, which has a very rich African-American history in the city of Washington, D.C. You cross town about a mile by the White House, go to the historic National Mall where the Washington Monument, the World War II Memorial, as well as other memorials, they have been graffitied. And the images of America's national monuments, historical monuments, where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, to see the graffiti of Black Lives Matter imprinted on those monuments is an image that no doubt will be remembered for years to come.
Kevin, so far the president has taken a pretty partisan approach in terms of his rhetoric, coming out with a series of tweets arranging with accusations against the media as well as Antifa, saying that he was going to designate it as a terrorist organization. Is there any pushback from Republicans saying that the president should take a page from the traditional playbook in this type of situation of taking a more bipartisan tone in terms of addressing the nation?
Yes, there is. And in fact, I spoke with several Republican staffers and including a re-election campaign official over the weekend who, quite frankly, I would describe their mood as uncomfortable, to put it mildly, with the response coming from the president. We saw this response after Charlottesville. Senator Marco Rubio, a Republican from Florida, in the last 24 hours, Lisa, tweeting out, and you mentioned Antifa, tweeting out that the riots and the looting and the fires that were set were carried out by, according to the senator's words, Antifa terrorists. This as the president, as you mentioned, tweeting out yesterday that Antifa, he has labeled a terrorist organization. Susan Rice, who is an African-American and also the former President Barack Obama's national security advisor, speaking on CNN over the weekend and saying that she believes that there could be foreign adversaries, including Russia, that have fueled the rioting aspect of these protests. She also said that she would be comfortable with labeling Antifa a terrorist organization. She is a prominent Democrat voice in Democratic national security circles. So I think, I say all of this because I think that over the next 24 to 48 hours, it's going to be imperative on behalf of the administration and Democrats to get to a point to separate out the violence from the peaceful protests.